Hey everyone, we are finally back with a public update video, and by we, I mean with me as always is Corey. Say hi, Corey.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
And it's been quite a while, and some pretty cool progress has been going on across the board with all our projects. But we're going to keep this video on the DaemonClaw and other modern platform development related stuff. And then very soon after we record this video, we'll be doing another one specifically for Metro Siege and some other projects that are being developed from the ground up for retro platforms. So let's get on to DaemonClaw. On the music side of things, the great musician we've been working with, Allister Brimble, just finished the biggest and longest song of the DaemonClaw soundtrack, but unfortunately we won't be sharing it with you guys right now, especially because it's literally the victory song for when you beat the game. So, in fact, even for our patrons, this is a case where we're really going to start holding things back so even our patrons have some nice, fresh surprises when they play the finished game for the first time. So don't worry, over the coming however long it takes us to finish any of these games we're working on, there will always be things we can show you, but we're going to start very strategically holding certain things back. And one of the things that we've done recently is Corey was taking a look at the most recent DaemonClaw build not too long ago and noticed some things that he could do for the title screen, and I might as well let Corey talk about it.
Basically, I've been going in and refining anything that needs it, including these story graphics and stuff. You know, we have this nice texture and stuff going on. But the title screen was one that it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was a lot of texture and detail added to all of the environments, even these story graphics,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
was slightly missing from the
Those two.
background of that. I didn't
Yeah.
want to alter anything about the logo or the character or anything, but
Right.
and I had also realized that the color palette that was used for level 1, which the title screen's kind of
Based on,
representing,
yeah.
wasn't quite present in the other image. So I wanted to bring that together, add some extra values, and get it looking the way it needs to.
Yep. So without further ado, let me actually show what that's looking like behind the scenes in the construct engine, and then we will actually run it for you. I'll also splice in a kind of before and after. So let me actually get it running. So as you can see, even before, Corey is just so fantastic with all pixel art, but especially stronger than most people with environment stuff, and color palette and stuff like that is always fantastic. But this addition of even richer texture and color looks fantastic. Great job as always, Corey. And
Yeah, and you
yeah.
had the additional thought of adding movement to the clouds, which we didn't have before. So that's now in there, and it looks good. So I think
Awesome.
it
Yeah.
completes it in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it keeps going to the demo. But, oh, in fact, yeah, I can just keep doing this and it should never play the demo video. But yeah, so basically, Corey had the graphics was static layers, but in layers. So I thought this is an opportunity. The art looks so great, it wouldn't take me very long at all to make the new clouds tileable horizontally, and then I could actually add the parallax and the looping. So that took me all of 2 seconds, a slight exaggeration, but a matter of minutes. And I just thought, we're enhancing it, and DaemonClaw, we're working on it in Construct for modern platforms, but all of the graphics and gameplay is based on how this game could look if and probably when it would be ported to the Sega Mega Drive, aka Genesis. And so, like, the color palette, the color limitations, all the limitations of parallax and all that stuff, it should translate very well once we're able to do a port. But Corey started down this path of, like, we can make this look even better within those constraints. And so while I was putting in the art, I thought we definitely could get this parallax on the clouds working on the Mega Drive as well. So let's give it a try and see how it looks. And I'm glad that Corey likes it too, because relatively recently, I also added the animation of the character, like the actual magic of the DaemonClaw, the gauntlet appearing.
Right.
And I also added the loop of the hair and the shine on the jewelry. I think he even blinks randomly on occasion. So bringing that life to the character and the shine on the logo, adding the moving clouds just kind of finishes this being like a real-time thing instead of a static screen with some animation. and it ties into the wind on the hair a bit.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that all worked out really well. And as always, like I said, fantastic work, Corey. And the other thing I can mention, usually when I played this demo while we were recording a video, I had to go in and adjust the audio of the game to lower the volume. But there was a bug in the previous build where even if you set your game volume, I can show it actually. You can go in here so you could see there's volume controls and everything. And before it was set to something like 70 or 75 by default. But even if you set it to something else and then saved it when you close the game and restarted, it didn't remember your saved settings. So that bug is now fixed as well. And that includes saving your input. Yeah, so either for gamepad or keyboard, you could totally pick which buttons do which for everything. We based it on some of the better classic console and arcade emulators where it is not a big tedious process. Like literally I can show you, once you click on map all or, press the button, it just asks you to press up, down, left, right, whatever button you want for attack, whatever one you want for jump. Same thing for magic, same thing for pause, and you're done. And then it just says press up twice to accept and down twice to retry. And then I just pressed up twice, and now it's all remapped to my new thing, my new custom settings. And just remember, though, if you do want it to save the way it works currently, and we could decide if we want it like this or not, but the way it works currently, you are supposed to save your settings to a slot for it to actually save it.
Right.
So long as you do that, now it actually does. And you can see there's 4 different slots. And this, keep in mind, these are your settings slots. These are not for stored game data, like game progression data or anything like that. But anyway, so let's get back from here. Another thing we'll be adding before we send the demo out to everyone is something that makes it obvious and maybe even like a mouse click away or a menu selection away from exiting the game from the title screen, just so people don't have to guess or do like, what is it, Alt F4 to exit the game.
There's also, through our testing, we've had feedback on the music and the way
Yes.
it works, like the hyped up music and stuff.
To get more specific, the 2 biggest influences gameplay-wise for DaemonClaw are Black Belt, aka Fists of the North Star, for the Sega Master System, and Altered Beast. And one of the big things that it got from Altered Beast is the concept of you power up in a level and the powers you get are different in every level. So instead of turning into like a werewolf or a strange bear, go watch our Corey and Mike play Altered Beast, everyone. So instead of changing into like were animals, the gauntlet takes different forms and gives you different magical powers per level. And like Altered Beast, once you become the were animal for the level, the music completely swaps out with a different song that's much more hyped up, much more energetic. So we borrowed the same concept for DaemonClaw, but the problem is in DaemonClaw, if you take a hit or two, you can lose that power again and then potentially regain it and so on. And so especially for beginner players, there could be a situation where they're regaining the power and then losing it after a second or two and then regaining it and then losing it. And so at least one person said, oh, that powered up version of the song is too loud and too repetitive. And the current build that people have been able to play, I had done a quick hack where I just slightly lowered the volume of the hyped up, powered up version of the song, but I lowered it too much. But the ultimate solution is something we're still working out, and we'll talk to Allister Brimble, the great musician. But probably what we'll do is a combination of things like making it so the songs don't hard reset when you swap back and forth, so there's way less repetition. Like they might continue on from where it was the last time you switched over, or like it would keep track of what percentage you're through one song, and when it switches to the other, it would go to that percentage of that other song, something like that. But yeah. So in the meantime, even before we can work out the perfect solution with Allister Brimble, I'm going to change the code so that it doesn't hard reset the songs. So Corey and I will figure out exactly which variant I explained we're going to do for now. So that's pretty much it for DaemonClaw. Other than that, before we send the demo out to all of the YouTubers and Twitch streamers we can that play retro-style games, I'm just going to spend like this coming week further tweaking and trying to perfect and balance the gameplay and the magic power levels of level 2. Level 1 got a lot of time spent on it and a lot of love over the development so far of DaemonClaw, and we've made a lot of progress balancing level 2, but I think we could still go further and make it just feel even better and more like a really nice smooth transition from level 1, and make sure every power level increase just feels really good, that the weakest power level is not too weak and all that stuff. So that's what I'll be doing this week. So by this coming weekend, we should be able to get a new demo version out to our testers, who have been doing a great job giving us really good feedback and finding bugs and stuff like that. So we really appreciate that. And so that's it for DaemonClaw. And I actually have another project open that I wanted to show both everyone watching and Corey. He hasn't seen most of what I've been working on with this yet either. Corey and I, we're not just into making games ourselves. We really love making a lot of different types of content to help others make games and hopefully learn more about some of the processes and some of the kind of thinking that helps in making a game and possibly increasing the quality of the game that you're working on. So we've made quite a few art packs, royalty-free art that people can buy and then use as is or edit that art to use in their own games. But also, we've actually made an entire platformer game engine, which is called the Basic Platformer Game Engine, which is made specifically for Construct 3 and Construct 2. Construct 2 is pretty much abandoned by Scira, the people that make the Construct line of game editors. But if you haven't switched to Construct 3 yet, the Basic Platformer engine we made still works with Construct 2. But we decided recently to make an enhanced version of that called the Enhanced Platformer Engine, which really adds a lot of nice, cool new features, more enemy types, and all kinds of stuff, which I'm going to walk through and show you guys and Corey. So again, for the enhanced version, you need Construct 3, which is a fantastic game authoring system. We also made a very long series of videos where you actually see us starting to make DaemonClaw from scratch. Literally, the game starts out with nuclear green rectangles instead of a player character walking around and stuff like that.
I think that there's about 40 or 50 hours of content there of us in the early stages of DaemonClaw. Yeah.
Super raw, too. Very little editing, and it's like, here we are figuring out as we go. Like, you can see an extremely exhausted Mike trying to figure out bugs, and Corey, like, keeping me on track and awake as I try to figure out why any given bug is happening and stuff like that. So, DaemonClaw is made in Construct 3. And we made a really nice, very easy to edit platformer game engine, and I've been adding some huge enhancements. So we're actually going to branch the platformer engine into two products. We're going to keep the basic platformer engine, which will be at a lower price point, and it's still compatible with Construct 2 for those who haven't switched over and upgraded to Construct 3. And then there's the enhanced one, and let me just get into what some of the enhancements are. And some of this stuff is still broken because one of the big enhancements are the resolution of the entire game has been enhanced. When we made that basic platformer engine quite a few years ago now, the performance of Construct-made games and the power level of the average Android and even iPad and iPhone device was a lot lower back then. So in order to make sure it would run on your average Android phone and stuff like that, like the finished game, I had the resolution relatively low compared to modern standards. Kind of made up resolution that scales well to any tablet or phone. And still looks good, but was really pushing the boundaries of what's considered a really high quality modern game. So I've upped the game to 1080p. So in doing that, I had to upscale all the graphics and the position of everything. So it's pretty funny. If I actually run it right now, I can show you some things have not been upscaled yet. So like this one was really quick to upscale. Also that text there is for debugging. But you can see this is the menu from when the game was smaller.
Right.
So now
Yeah.
it's, I moved it so at
Micro
least
menu.
it's, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And look at the logo for the game and stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And there should be a character that doesn't even show up. Like it's so small and it's not placed right. So the character that's supposed to slide onto the screen just doesn't even make it onto the visible part of the screen or something. So anyway, but ignore that stuff. But the cool stuff I'm doing is, let me actually, yeah, sure, we'll save over this. So a lot of this stuff, like this tiny font, I'm going to actually replace this with a bitmap font. So the person customizing their game can make this all look exactly how they want. Done. So this is where someone can put whatever intro video or static image or a hand programmed animation in Construct or whatever. And then it goes into the gameplay. And so one of the things I need to change right away is we're adding an actual like Mario 3 style world map where you pick which levels you go to and they can branch and you unlock levels as you go. And one level might have several different ways you can beat it that will unlock different paths branching out from that. That's all mostly working. So I might show that a little bit. But like I said, keep in mind, some of this stuff is blatant placeholder graphics. You can see my lovely coin HUD here.
Yeah.
And I've upscaled the graphics without cleaning them up. So if you see the really jagged HUD stuff, that's because it was a much lower resolution and just to start to get things working and in the right place.
Yeah, I think those trees back there too.
They're still their size they were for the
right.
old
So
game.
there are a few like scale things.
Unfinished business. So one of the things I did is add the coin system. So now you'll be able to decide very easily, are there things like coins or gems? You could very easily move this and redraw it and put it wherever you want on the HUD. It could be in the bottom left or wherever. So, fully customizable, but that now works. And if you set a value and then like literally you just set the number. So if you want 99 or 100 coins collected to give you a life, it'll just work. You just type in that number. You could super easily tweak whether or not your character can run by holding the attack button. All of the speeds and inertias and acceleration and deceleration are super easy to edit and test out. There's all kinds of stuff like whether or not your character can duck, and then whether or not your character will do like now you can actually do the running slide like Mario by ducking and like that. Or there's actually a slide feature like some of the later Mega Man games and other classic platformer games, which is holding down and pressing duck. So like, for a really fast evasive move. And again, the animation speed, the speed at which you slide, how long you slide, all of that is super easy to edit. Same thing with, can my character do a double jump or a wall jump? All of that, you change one setting and it just works. And then you can tweak how high or fast the wall jump is, your regular jump, your jump sustain. That's another thing I've augmented, is the jump sustain and how controllable that is in the settings. But the most important thing I added to jumping is what's called coyote time. So it's based on Wile E. Coyote. You know, he can walk off the edge of a cliff and then before he realizes it, he's just standing there in the air. So the reason they call it coyote time is in platformer game development, they've made the input more and more forgiving to players. And especially for games like, Super Meat Boy and stuff like that, where there's a ton of hazards and you need to really quickly navigate and keep jumping and moving around and stuff. They made the input more and more forgiving. So the point is, even a split second after I've walked off the edge of a cliff, if I press jump, he'll still jump. So you never get that cheap feeling like, oh God, like I should have jumped. I thought I was still on the edge. And then conversely, if you're doing a sequence of jumps, like I press jump and then I press jump again, if I press jump a split second even before I've landed, it'll remember. And within that time frame, so long as I press jump a split second before I land, it'll actually know that I meant to jump as soon as I land. And the cool thing is, there's just a variable, and you set that variable. If you set it to anything other than 0, then that turns on the feature, and that number is how many hundredths of a second that it gives you that window of time. And as I think Corey noticed while I was explaining the other thing, there's now those two different platforms, obviously, with placeholder art. So there's the kind of destructible platforms, and you could see two different variants working there, and that's a simple variable you set. Do you want it to start shaking, but then if you get back off of it, it kind of resets? And that's what this one on the right is. Like, as soon as I get off of it, it resets back to its normal state. And obviously, you could change the art of everything. So you can make it like, in Super Mario 3, there's those platforms where they just turn red and start shaking like they're gonna fall. But if you jump back off of it, they reset. But then there's this version where you turn on the cumulative damage mode, and then it stays like you can make it look like it's starting to crack and deteriorate or whatever. And then, if you're on it for more than a split second, it continues to the next stage and then will fall. And then you can even set with a simple value in that block, while the block is falling, can I still jump off of it? Imagine the one that's crumbling. You could change the falling art to make it look like it's literally disintegrating into dust, at which point you should not be able to jump off of it.
Right.
Now, another feature that I've added that's super easy to change is the jump through platforms. So now you can tell the game with a simple value change, do I want the player to be able to drop down off of the platform right through it by either holding down and pressing jump, which I like the most in most circumstances, or by double tapping down quickly. I don't have that turned on right now, but it does work. So you can have it not work at all, so you can never jump through, or you can make it work either way, where it's double tap down or hold down and press jump. And the reason you might want hold down and press jump to not work is because you have the slide move. Like, imagine you want to slide, but instead you drop down and maybe there's an enemy there and you drop right down into it and get hurt or something. And you could see the other thing here is, like in some of the Mega Man games, you have the platforms that appear and disappear. So it's like, how long do they take to appear? Is their cycle consistent? I went through a lot of extra pains to make this foolproof, where you set up the cycle between all of the blocks in the cycle, and they'll never get off sync with each other no matter what you do. So there are some actual coins. You could see them accumulate. It just reset to 0 for some reason, I noticed. In fact, it gave me a life. In order to test that feature, I turned it on and I made it so like you only need 3 coins to get a life.
Oh, right.
So I collected those coins, it went up to 3, and then it gave me the life and subtracted those 3. So that's why the coins just went to 0. If you were paying attention, the life went up as well at the same time. And so now I drastically improved the water. The water is way easier to put in place in the level editor. Before, I left it up to the person editing their level. They literally needed to add 2 separate, or actually no, 3 separate things that you drag out like a rectangle and make sure they were in the same spot and, the same size as each other. And then you had to like hand place a bunch of sprites to create the water edge, like ripple effect and stuff like that. So huge time consuming ordeal if you wanted water in your level. So now you literally drag out one rectangle that looks like water, and everything else happens automatically. And it's much more advanced now, so much that you can even create like squares or cubes of water just floating in space. And you can enter them from any side or below. You can exit from any side or below. There's separate water movement speeds and gravity and stuff like that. So maybe you would want this to be floating cubes of jello, and you want it to be even slower in there and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
So all of those are possible now. So yeah, I added the invulnerability star. So obviously it doesn't need to be a star, because I hear Nintendo are very litigious. So I wouldn't recommend making a star. Another really cool feature I added recently is if you have running turned on in your game, you can also just turn on one simple feature. Running at high speed lets you run on the surface of water. So let me run right across. And then you can see when I hit the wall. So if I'm running, if I'm not at full speed, I just fall right into the water. Well, if I wasn't running, I accelerated pretty quick, but you get the idea. Bloop, I fall right in. But if I'm running, and the cool thing, it's not just turning the feature on and off. Again, by entering a number other than 0, you're setting the percentile threshold. Like, do I need to be at least 80% of the full speed? And then I'll run across the surface of the water.
Yeah. I mean, I tried doing that as a kid. It didn't work.
But anyway, once I'm done adding the last of these new features, the next step is going to be simultaneously advertising this platformer engine by making super concise, like 60-second tutorial videos for each specific feature. Like, look, camera. I massively improved the camera controls. So now there's like easing to the camera. The other thing you could see when I turn directions, so now there's a setting. Do you want the camera to shift over so that you can naturally see more in front of the character you're controlling than behind? So there's if at all and to what degree. And there's the speed at which it eases. And then it's separate, the speed for which it eases vertically. And then there's also an offset for the vertical. And have you ever experienced in some really old platformers, to compensate for poor level design, they would have it so if you ducked for a certain amount of time, the camera would shift down so you could see more of the level below you. So there's less, what is it called? Leap of faith jumps.
Yes.
Which again, everyone, if you're designing a platformer game, leap of faith is just bad level design. Yeah, and luckily for a general platformer engine, it wasn't that complicated, but I did make it so that you can hand set the vertical offset of the camera when you're on the ground, separately from when you're jumping, separately from when you're falling, and it eases between all of them. Mm-hmm. So like, you could really carefully set it depending on your game and level design. You could very nicely set it to make sure you avoid as much as possible any kind of leap of faith type situation. And, that things look nice and fluid and not jarring in any way. Yeah.
It looks too, because I remember the older version of this engine, and it looks like you have made sure the character movement is a little more solid and everything too. Like it seems like that's the case. So,
it was
it's really enjoyable editor.
Yeah.
Sort
like you could set all of that to perfect it even in the old engine, but what I left as the default settings in the old engine were ridiculously floaty, like you were underwater.
Right.
And
maybe that's
so
why
I fixed that.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to fix any code for that, but I really fixed the default values of it to be much more in keeping with great platformers like the Mario franchise and a lot of modern really loved platformers. Yep. And keep in mind, everyone, though, that like all of that, you can hyper customize to your content. Not only the character movement, max speeds, acceleration, deceleration, and all the different situations, including how quickly they fall, how quickly they accelerate and decelerate, like in water versus out. And then on top of all of that, there's how does the camera follow the character and with what offsets and with what degree of easing. So let me get to the next level to show you one more thing. And then I think so here's a sneak preview of the map. So I got that working with the navigation. It saves your progress. It locks and unlocks levels. So let me go to level 2. And so this level has had a massive change recently. This is what I'm still working on, so a lot of this is still very broken. But so here are moving platforms that follow a path, and obviously the nodes, I call them, the 1, 2, 3, those should be invisible. But I just started getting this functionality working, and this is going to be another thing that's super robust. So you're going to be able to just drag one of these platforms onto your level and drag these nodes wherever you want them, and you're just changing their animation frame. So it literally, visibly, you could see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and it'll go in that order. But the really cool thing is, at the start and per node, you get to tell it what movement, speed, acceleration, and deceleration it should use to go to the next node, and how much of a pause, if any, when it transitions. So when it hits a node, you could tell it, wait there for a while, anywhere from a few fractions of a second to several seconds if you want for some reason. And then and then how quickly it'll accelerate into what max speed and then decelerate to reach the next node, and then that's per node. And then the really cool thing is you decide which node is the end node, and with super easy variable settings, you tell it, okay, now that you've reached the end node, do you want the platform to deactivate and stay there? Do you want it to play a going to fall animation and then fall? Or do you want it to bounce so it does the same exact path backwards to the starting point? So it would keep, ping-ponging back and forth in the track you made? Or do you want it to go back to the original position? So it would do a cycle, right? Instead of a ping-pong. Or do you want it to disintegrate, play a disintegrating animation, and then respawn back at the start? Oh, I just remember one other feature I added. Exactly like the platform with the nodes thing, I've completely upgraded the existing in the basic platformer engine. There was moving camera support. It was a bullet behavior, so you could set it to any angle and any speed, but that was it. There was no path you could set. It couldn't change speed super easily from node to node because there were no nodes. So now the camera can do everything that the platformer does when you want a level that has auto-scrolling. And simply by adding an auto-scrolling camera, like literally you just drag it into your level, that basically turns on the code for auto-scrolling. And now the game's camera and scrolling does not follow the player anymore. It automatically follows the scrollable camera. And now you can set thresholds for, okay, now that it's an auto-scrolling game, can you basically scroll off of the left, right, top, or bottom? And does that kill you or not automatically? Like within a threshold. How many pixels off of the bottom of the screen, if it's a vertically upward scrolling auto level, how far do I need to be at the off screen at the bottom before it kills me?
Absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, that is it. I think not only for this, but for this video in general. That's what we've been working on, the kind of modern platform and construct side of things. And very shortly, you'll see a video for Metro Siege and the other projects we're working on. So thanks, as always, very much for watching.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.